Today, we are digging into one of the most incredible archaeological discoveries ever made. We're talking about a silent, underground army, thousands of soldiers strong, all built to guard an emperor in the afterlife. This is the story of the Terracotta Army. Just try to imagine it. Thousands of life-size soldiers completely hidden from the world, just waiting for a battle that was never, ever going to come. An entire army buried and just forgotten by time.
So how does an army like that stay a secret for over 2,000 years? Well, the story of its rediscovery doesn't start with archaeologists and fancy equipment. No, it starts with a few farmers who are just trying to dig a well. And that simple search for water would end up changing history forever.
So let's dive right into that moment. It's a completely accidental find in the 20th century that connects our modern world directly back to the very first emperor of China. To really get a sense of the timeline here, the army was sealed away way back around 210 BCE. For over 2,000 years, it was basically a myth. And then bam, March 29, 1974, everything changes. The discovery was so huge, so important, that by 1987, it was already a UNESCO World Heritage Site. That's incredibly fast.
So there they were, digging a well during a drought when a farmer's shovel hit something hard, but it wasn't a rock. So they kept digging, and what they pulled out of the ground was the life-sized head of a warrior. What they had stumbled upon was just the very edge of this, the largest group of pottery figures ever found. It was just a tiny preview of the sheer scale of what was still buried.
So you have to ask, who would even command such a massive, mind-boggling project? To understand this army, you first have to understand the man who ordered it to be built.
This whole thing was the vision of one man, Qin Shi Huang. He was the formidable, powerful first emperor of a unified China. And he wasn't just building a tomb for himself. He was creating an entire eternal empire. And of course, he was going to need an army to protect him in the next life.
Now, the part that's really hard to wrap your head around is the sheer scale of this project. According to the ancient historian Sima Khan, it took a workforce of 700,000 conscripted workers. I mean, think about that. 700,000 people. A truly monumental effort for a monumental ego.
But as incredible as this army is, you have to realize it's just one piece of the puzzle. It's part of the emperor's true vision, a sprawling, complex, subterranean empire that was built to last for eternity. The entire burial complex, the necropolis, spans a staggering 98 square kilometers. It wasn't just a tomb. It was designed to be a complete life-size replica of his imperial palace, with everything from offices and halls to stables and parks.
And the army itself was laid out in these massive pits, each with its own military purpose. You got Pit 1, the biggest one, holding the main infantry force. Then Pit 2 is like the mobile division, cavalry, war chariots ready to move. And Pit 3? Well, that's the command post, the nerve center for the entire operation. But here's where it gets even more interesting. It wasn't just about war. The emperor wanted his entire court with him for eternity. Archaeologists have found terracotta officials, musicians, and even these amazing figures of acrobats and strongmen. He wanted to make sure his afterlife would be well-governed and, apparently, very well entertained.
Okay, so the existence of the army is one marvel, but how they actually made it? Well, that's a whole other incredible story.
What's just fascinating is that they used what was essentially a sophisticated assembly line, something we think of as a modern invention. Different workshops would mass-produce parts, torsos here, arms there, heads over here. These pieces were then stuck together with clay. And then, the final crucial step. Master craftsmen would add custom details, mustaches, different hairstyles, unique facial expressions, turning a generic figure into a real individual. And then, a final coat of paint.
In fact, the realism is so unbelievably striking that a lot of scholars now think the artists modeled them on actual individual soldiers from the emperor's real-life army. So they weren't just statues. You could almost think of them as portraits in clay.
And you have to remember, originally they were an explosion of color. We're talking greens from malachite, blues from azurite, reds from cinnabar. They even used a really complex synthetic pigment known as Han purple, which was incredibly rare and advanced for its time.
Yeah, today we see that familiar brownish-gray terracotta color. But when they were first created, these warriors would have looked astonishingly lifelike. Sadly, that vibrancy is one of the great casualties of time. It's almost all gone now.
And this brings us to one of the biggest challenges for archaeologists today:
So the warriors were coated in this special tree sap lacquer to hold the paint. The problem is, after 2,000 years underground, the moment that lacquer is exposed to the dry air, it begins to curl and flake away. The color can be destroyed in as little as 4 minutes.
The realism didn't stop with the soldiers, either. No, they were armed for battle with real, state-of-the-art bronze weapons. We're talking over 40,000 of them found so far. Swords, crossbow triggers, spear tips. And thanks to a protective chromium coating, which is an amazing piece of technology for the time, many of them were still lethally sharp after 2 millennia.
This incredible, lifelike artistry has sparked a really fascinating debate. Some scholars look at it and say, this realistic style is so different from other Chinese art of the time, maybe there was some influence from the Greek world from Hellenistic sculptures. But other experts strongly disagree. They argue there's really no direct evidence for that, and that this view kind of underestimates the unique genius of the Qin dynasty artisans themselves.
All of this brings us to the biggest mystery of all, the one that lies at the very heart of this entire complex.
The ancient historian Sima Qian, the same guy who told us about the 700,000 workers, left this tantalizing description of the emperor's tomb. He wrote about a miniature kingdom with a ceiling full of stars and, most famously, rivers of flowing mercury. For centuries, people just assumed this was a legend, pure fantasy.
Until modern science got involved. Soil samples taken from the giant earth mound that covers the unopened tomb show incredibly high concentrations of mercury in patterns that perfectly match the historian's description of rivers. Suddenly, the legend might just be real.
The tomb itself remains sealed. Archaeologists are worried that opening it now, with our current technology, could destroy whatever treasures are inside. And so we're all left to wonder. With a silent army standing guard and rivers of poison flowing, what other secrets does the first emperor's final resting place still hold?